Thank you. After a little bit of technical adjustment, I got involved with National Popular Vote here at a week meeting. Another member, you remember Murray Newton, made a short presentation about National Popular Vote at one of our Saturday meetings, and I was instantly intrigued. Um, I was I immediately started attending classes, training, etc. about National Popular Vote because I find it absolutely fascinating. It's become ever more captivating after the past 23 years with the elections of 2000 and the last few elections we've had. Ultimately, the question is, should anybody's vote count more than yours? That's what the question is. I believe National Popular Vote will be the most historic and noteworthy pieces of legislation by each legislature. And when it becomes effective, it will be the most consequential legislation. The shocking fact is voters have no federal constitutional right to vote for president or vice president or for presidential electors. Are you aware of that? Do all of you think that your vote should count? Raise your hand. Everybody's vote should be equal, right? When the Constitution was originally designed in the 1700s, think about our country in 1789 at the time of the first election. There was no internet. There was no very little communication, few newspapers. A lot of people lived in rural areas, no telephones, very difficult for information about elections to get out. Things have changed, and I think we need to adapt to those changes. National Popular Vote Interstate Compact guarantees the presidency person who receives the most popular votes in all 50 states and the District of Columbia combined. Of the elected officials in the United States, there are something like over 500,000, but there are none that are elected in the same way that the president is. For every other office, the candidate who receives the most vote wins. But for the president and vice president, there's a different method. This is a segment from the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution sets up a different system for the president using electors. And I'm sure most of you know that. But I think you don't know how they really affect our elections. The number of electors in each state is equal to the number of representatives and the senators in each state. And this is the new numbers after the last census. As you can see, the smaller population states, North Dakota, South Dakota, and for example, Wyoming, they only have 3. They have 2 senators and a representative, so they only get 3 electors. But states like Florida get 30 electors. There are 538 electors nationwide. It takes 270 to win. If there are 269 electors for each of our major candidates, what happens? Who knows? Eileen? Goes to the House of Representatives. We lose the right to select our own president if there's an equal number of electors. So 270 electors are needed to win. In 1789, the first presidential election, I found this very, very interesting. Of the 13 states at that time, only 10 states participated in the election. The other states couldn't decide how to select electors. 6 of the states used some method where people who voted, and again, the states determined who voted, and usually it was white males who owned land in many cases. They chose the electors. In 3 states, the legislature appointed the electors. In 1 state, the governor and his cabinet decided who the electors are. When Tennessee became a state in 1796, I find this very funny. The legislature said, because again, they select the electors, they want to do this with as little trouble to the citizens as possible. And so what they decided is they went to all these different counties and selected prominent people who would then be the Tennessee Electoral Committee, who selected electors who would then go to Washington. And in many cases, they actually named the people who was going to be on the committee. I guess they decided this nation wasn't going to last that long. There are 538 electors across 50 states in the District of Columbia. We already said that. What's happened, though, in many cases, the person who comes in second wins the election. An example is in these 2 elections, these 2 people didn't have the majority of the popular vote in this country, but they became the president because they had the electoral votes twice in the last 20 years. And it happened 3 times in the 1800s. Well, some people, and the League of Women Voters leaned in this direction too, said, well, we should have a constitutional change. Let's vote to change this in the Constitution. This is almost impossible. It requires 2/3 vote of Congress and 3/4 votes of the state to make a change to the Constitution. This is not likely. But there's another way to fix this. The Constitution, as you saw originally, gives each state legislature the right to choose the system that they will use for awarding electors. And each legislature can change the way they make that selection. In fact, Massachusetts has changed it 12 times. They haven't been able to decide how to do it. Now they do winner take all, as we'll be talking about. Each legislature can change their method, not just for the votes for the state's most popular candidate, and then those totals are added to the candidate's nationwide total. The candidate with the most electoral votes across the nation is the winner. But that's not how it's done any longer. The best illustration of this is in 1796, the election. It was our 3rd election, most competitive one. In Pennsylvania, Virginia, and North Carolina, Jefferson received all the electoral votes except for 3, 1 in each one of the states. So Jefferson's 20 votes in Virginia counted toward his total nationwide, but so did Adams' vote in Virginia count toward his. Jefferson realized that if Virginia had winner take all, everybody take the state, and one of the other states, he would have won the election. And he pushed for Virginia to change the system of awarding electors. Other states, little by little, also made that change. till actually throughout the 1800s. It took about 100 years for that to happen. Winner take all took hold. The candidate who wins the most votes in the states receives all that state's electoral votes. Basically, it strips electoral votes from the second highest and third place candidates and gives them to the highest vote getter in the state. The winner-take-all system has been in place during during all of our lives. And most people don't even question it. But it hasn't always been this way, and it doesn't need to stay this way. As this shows you, if candidate A wins 47% of the vote in a state and candidate B wins 46, with the other 7% going to other candidates, candidates B, C, E, and F don't get any electoral votes, and they all go to candidate A. That's it. So not every vote across the country counts, and not every vote counts equally. In presidential elections, which this is 1 year of them, in more than half the states are announced even before the votes are officially counted. Why? Because most states are not swing states. They're spectator states or flyover states. As a result of winner take all, spectator states are predictably red or blue. We know before the election which candidate will win the spectator states. The real election takes place in the swing or battleground states, the 8 to 12 states that are competitive, that can go red or blue in an election. What happens in the swing states determines the winner of the presidential election. In the 2020 presidential election, there were 12 swing states. 96% of the general election campaign events by the candidates were in these 12 states. That meant 96% of the advertising money, the TV money, the hiring of assistants for the election, that's who got all the money from this election. Also, if the incumbent president is running, he tends to give grants to those states. And more money, federal money from grants, go to those states that are swing states because he wants to win the next election. The numbers show how many events were held in those states. 33 states, this after the convention, 33 states didn't even get a visit from the candidate. There was no activity in those states because they were predictably red or blue. So those people pretty much are sitting out the election. Candidates don't want to waste their time on states that they couldn't win or states that they couldn't lose. They spend all their time in swing states, and swing states can change. In 2024, there will be 9 swing states. Most consultants say there will only be 5 swing states. The voters in these few swing states will determine the outcome of the election. Notice for the first time, Florida is no longer a swing state. Swing states change. Whether your vote counts for president depends on where you live. In 2024, 41 states and the District of Columbia will be considered spectator states. 9 swing states, or 20% of the population, will make the determination on who's going to be president. In the 2020 election, it's bad enough that because of winner take all, just a handful of swing states will determine the president. But it gets worse. The difference between who wins and who loses in those swing states is just a fraction of 1%. In 2020, Joe Biden won by 7 million votes nationwide, popular vote. There were 11.5 million voters in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. If there was a shift of just 2,500 voters to Mr. Trump, Trump would have won the election. That would have been a little over 5,000 in Arizona, a little over 10,000 in Wisconsin, and 5,900 in Georgia. And I know you've heard the Georgia number frequently. Trump would have won these 3 states in the presidency, despite the fact that Biden won by 7 million votes. That's just 0.2% of the actual votes in those 3 states. Let me illustrate what 0.2 of a percentage is. This is 1,000 X's. Do you see what 0.2 are on this? There are 2 red X's. And that shows you who decided the election, or who can decide the election. 0.2% can change the winner of the presidency. Let's go to 2016. Donald Trump received 3 million fewer votes nationwide than Clinton, but Trump won. The actual number was 2.8 million. If there was a shift to Clinton of just 0.3% across 3 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Clinton would have won. And 2020 and 16 were not unusual. In 2004, George Bush beat Kerry by 3 million popular votes. But with a shift of 0.1% of the votes in Ohio, Kerry would have won the presidency. So it shows how few people are needed in certain areas to win the presidency. These fragile electoral wins invite post-election recounts. I want to recount in Georgia. I want to recount in Arizona. I want to recount in Wisconsin. Audits. Let's audit these numbers in these states. Lawsuits with judges deciding elections, even violent attacks. Supporters of a losing candidate might be able to alter 2,500 votes, the amount needed in 2020, but overturning 3 million, 7 million or 9 million votes nationwide would be nearly impossible. And I'll mention some of the foreign interference that we have found with some of the election systems in states. What states would you interfere with? Let's interfere with the battleground states. The other states are too much to manage. As you can see, in addition to only the swing states choosing the president, there's further inequity because some people have 2, 3, or 4 times the voting power of others. That's what this chart shows. This chart shows how many people are represented by one by one elector. Starting on the left, you can see how many people are represented by one elector. For example, if you see Vermont on the chart, one elector represents 200,000 people. And you come all the way to Florida, one elector represents 760,000 people, but they both have the same one vote. The votes of people are not equal. I asked at the very beginning if someone's vote should count more than yours. One person, one vote is a fundamental principle, but it's violated by the presence of swing states, winner take all, and the current allocation of electors. So, how do we make every vote count? What can we do? Well, I was talking about the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. It's an interstate compact. It's passed by the state legislature of states who choose to participate. Those states agree to change how they award their electoral votes and choose their electors. And they guarantee the presidency to the candidate who receives the most popular votes in all 50 states and the District of Columbia combined. The features of the National Popular Vote Compact: first of all, it respects states' rights. States have the right to choose electors, and it still allows them to choose electors. It doesn't change the Constitution. In fact, it does just what the Constitution directs, leaving the power in each state legislature to change how they award their electors. If national popular vote is passed in sufficient legislatures, the candidates will campaign in all states because campaigns need everyone's vote. Also, candidates are going to move toward the center in policy issues. As they talk to the battleground states, they're not going to be as leftist or rightist as they might be otherwise. And this is supported by Democrats, Republicans, and the public. It's a nonpartisan issue. It's a nonpartisan solution. We have been moving along with national popular vote. I was active in Colorado 2 years ago when it was on the ballot, when it was decided to put it on the ballot, and it was passed in Colorado several years ago. It's been enacted into law by 16 states and the District of Columbia. The current total is 205 electoral votes. Remember, we need 270 to elect the president. If you look at this, the green states have it enacted into law already. In the orange states, it's been passed by one chamber of their legislature. In the yellow state, if you look at Nevada, it was passed by both chambers. It has to go back to the chambers again this year, be passed and signed by the governor, very much like Florida's laws. And in the blue states, they have had at least one hearing about it. The gray states, there has not even been a hearing in the legislature for a national popular vote. That doesn't mean that the vote hasn't, the bill hasn't been put forth. It's just that the decision was made that they're not going to have a hearing about it. We're very close in Nevada, in Michigan, in Maine, but we're not there yet. In Florida, this year, 2024, Representative Michael Gottlieb has put forth a bill for national popular vote in the House, and Senator Victor Torres has put forth a bill in the Senate. In 2022, there were only 3 co-sponsors. Last year, there were 10 co-sponsors when the bill came forward. For 2024, we have a commitment from 25 legislators and senators for this bill to be put before the legislature. The question is, what can you do? Well, how can you help make national popular vote a reality? And I have flyers by the side here, and I'm going to ask Eileen to put it in the chat too. My contact as well as the website. You can go to Floridians for National Popular Vote. They make it very simple for you because you can send an email to your legislator directly from that website. The website's on the flyer that's available for you. You can click on the button to automatically send the email of support to your legislator or receive our newsletter. You can become a member. You can get involved in this. We need as many people as possible on this. And also tell your friends about National Popular Vote. If you go to the website, there are several videos there which explain National Popular Vote for people who may not be aware of it or knowledgeable about it. And that is it. I hope I answered most of your questions. It isn't that complicated once you get an opportunity to take a look at the numbers and see. I'm not happy about letting 5 states decide who my president's going to be. It's just that simple. And that's where we are at this point. 5 states make that determination for all of us. So, questions? Yes. So was I. This is possible. I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Oh, I'm so sorry. Carol was saying she thought that this was probably a lost cause because you would need a constitutional amendment to make a change to this. And you can see this is a way to do it. This is a practical, very elegant solution as far as I'm concerned for resolving the situation with the electors. Questions? Yes, sir.
Is the essence of it that the electoral votes get distributed by the portion of votes in the state, and that's how you get the
No, the problem is that the electoral vote goes to all the electoral votes goes to the highest scoring candidate.
Because most all of the states have gone to a winner takes all approach.
Winner take all.
This would make it proportional, right, to the vote.
No, actually what happens is that whatever the total vote is nationwide, that's who the electors
Okay,
go to.
okay, now I understand.
That's who the electors go to. The two exceptions to winner take all are Maine and Nebraska. And they have a winner take all that's proportioned out by congressional district. It's a little bit different. Not a big difference, but a little bit different. Yes.
So you have to wait till every vote is counted across the nation
Yes.
before each state's electors are then announced.
Yeah. Before yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
So what am I missing here? So if some small state actually the majority voted Republican,
Yeah.
but overall in the nation, the popular vote went to the Democrat, then that little
Their electors has to,
that little Republican state would have to move their electors to the Democratic.
yeah.
Wow.
But what they do now is if that state currently is, 49-47, they're going to choose whatever elector is applicable to that right now.
I
Are you
just don't,
following?
yeah, I just don't see how you sell it to the small states that,
How do you sell it to the big states?
oh,
It's the same
Yeah.
situation, whether the state is a red state or a blue state. If they're normally a blue state and a red candidate wins the popular vote, their electors go to that candidate. And we have sold it to most of the California, Illinois, Nebraska, New York, a lot of the large states as well as the small states, because what happens is, as in Florida in this election, their election becomes almost moot because they're not a battleground state. And that's what happens. And I hate to, I almost hate to say that to people because it's like, well, what difference does it make if I vote then? And I don't want people to feel that way. It's more than the presidency. There's lot more on the ballot. But I think people need to know how the Electoral College truly affects them. I thought it was more proportional before I started working on this, and it's not. It's winner take all. They get the pot, and the second place winner, or even the first place winner can get, dropped out in the finals. So we can see. The other thing is we worry about the elector somehow getting evenly divided and the election going to the House of Representatives, which is scary too. Yes, ma'am.
Am I understanding you correctly that all of the votes would go to nationwide would go rather than the winner in each state?
That's correct.
That doesn't seem fair to me now. It seems the same
That
as
the winner of the
electoral
popular
system.
vote nationwide would become president.
Well, I was thinking too, if you look at the states, I saw a map the other day, uh, only the exterior states were blue. Primarily all of the internal states were red. So therefore, even though I'm not for that, even they would lose their vote. They would lose.
That's not true.
Then there's
let me
something
go-
I'm not understanding.
Let me see if I can go back and show you about who is who. Let me find the right slide here. Just a moment. Uh, Okay, if you look at this, this is the red and blue states. This is where they are right now. This is what they look like. Are they in the last election, what they looked like? What happens now is in Texas, if the blue candidate gets the second place, all the votes go to the red candidate. Is that correct? It's easier for me to say than say names of candidates, okay? What would happen if all the other states selected the blue, or all the blue states and some of the red selected the blue candidate, then Texas would end up having a blue president, even though they're a red state. Okay, but what happens now is in California, because it's a blue state, the electors all go to the blue candidate, and the people who voted red, their votes virtually don't count. But the bottom line here is the person who gets the most votes in the country nationwide, do you believe they should be president? Every other office goes that way. And I won't go into the politics of how the electors were selected, because it goes into southern states, northern states, slavery, all other things go into the reason that we have electors and why they did this. Oh, okay.
For 2024, with 16 states, will they be doing this, or are they contingent upon the other states doing it?
No.
And how does this affect the
It does
2024
not
election?
go into effect until sufficient states agree to national popular vote that we have 270 electoral votes. And once there are 270 electoral votes that agree to national popular vote, Florida could keep on doing winner take all. It doesn't make a difference, because 270 electoral votes wins the election. So it doesn't matter what the other states do. Okay, so that's what we are, I won't say we're working toward getting 270. Every year we get one or two more states. We move in that direction all the time. Jerry?
Question is that being a native Floridian, I have noticed that with all of the people moving to Florida,
Yeah,
see, we used to be a blue state,
yeah.
but everybody that moved down here affected that. So how can we go about changing that? That's what I feel that it's beyond our control.
Well, we can't change whether or not we're a majority blue or majority red state. That's something we can't change. And we're not trying to change. All we want to do is get the legislature to change the selection of electors, that the electors use the nationwide vote to determine who they're going to vote for. I hope I'm making this clear.
So in other words, most of us in this room, I think, would agree that the candidate that wins the national popular vote should be president. Knowing that it is near impossible these days to get a constitutional amendment through,
Mhm.
this is, as you said, a very elegant way of ensuring that national popular vote is adopted in this country without having to go through the pain and dubious success of a constitutional amendment.
That's true.
And I would add that your vote still counts as a vote
Yes.
to help to increase that total for the one
Your
candidate
vote will
across.
count even more,
Yeah.
because your vote becomes part of the nationwide total. And that's why your vote will count even more. I saw some more hands up here. Betsy?
What I don't understand is what would motivate a solid red state. Let's use Texas as an example. A state that sends people from the border up to they hate New York and some of the other
Mhm.
East Coast states. And it's a no-brainer to them that historically it is the big cities and the two coasts. As somebody earlier talked about the central region of the US. I don't understand what would, I understand your argument, and of course it works for
Yeah.
me, but I,
The
except
fact
for
that-
saying, and it sounds just idealistic to say, well, now your vote's going to count more. I don't think that's going to convince the really, really scarlet red states. So what has been the convincer?
Well, I think yeah, I know. It's a struggle. It's going to be a struggle for Florida. It's going to be a struggle for Texas. But I think as more and more people become educated and realize that the president's being selected by so few people. I don't necessarily want Iowa to select my president. Well, that's true. That's true. It should be popular vote. But, and I know it's huge because they have 40 electoral votes. We got California that's got 54, and Illinois and New York all have come on board. Colorado that has 10 electoral votes used to be a red state. It's purple right now from what I gather. And I think more and more people become educated, they're going to realize this is what, look at Florida. Florida used to be, a battleground state. Now they're not.
Just doesn't look like a quantum leap between legislators voting for this and legislators voting to remove the Electoral College. This doesn't seem like
It's
a big different argument.
It's, you know what it is? It's taking it one bite at a time. That's what we're doing. We're taking it one bite. Look at when we were trying to get women's rights to vote, women's right to vote. It was every representative, every senator trying to, and I've gone through in Washington. They actually have a women's vote center there where they actually show how they went through to get women's right to vote. It's in a lot of ways it's similar to this, but the thing is that it's, this is maintaining the state's right. The state has a right to choose how they want their electors to be chosen. They could actually, Texas could pass a law that says the governor decides who the electors are. The governor makes all the decision. And there is no constitutional right to vote president by the population of the United States. Yeah, Carol?
Wouldn't it be an easier sell if we were going for proportionate representation? Like in Texas, mostly red, but there would be blue electors around Austin.
Uh-huh.
So Texas's 4 votes around Austin would go blue and the rest of the states. So the end result would be whoever got the most. But they get to think
It's
that,
still discounting electors. It's still, so in other words, yeah, it's still yeah, it's still
But
discounting.
if you
some
had
of-
electors, it's just, 4 go blue in Texas and the other
the way to
36
go.
red.
We have 205 electors. We need 65. Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. Eileen?
Yes, there's a question from Ellen Ballard in the chat. What are the arguments against national popular vote? And I'll say, we did get feedback on the invitation where right away, it's unconstitutional. So I think a major takeaway is that the Constitution designates state legislatures that it's not
It
unconstitutional.
is not
And then
unconstitutional.
if you know other arguments against national popular vote, Ellen was interested.
Some people say, well, it's gonna take votes away from the small states. Well, it doesn't, because the small states would be included and they'd be represented. There's some let's see, I'm trying to think of what unconstitutional is, what the major one is. There are many interstate compacts, which is what this is, where you say, if you do this, we'll do this together. There are many interstate compacts. So interstate compacts are not, I'm trying to think of some of the myths that come up and some of the things that come up. There's a concern that, well, if we did this, Florida would end up, or Texas would end up controlling the election. Well, if it's nationwide, that's not going to happen. You're not going to have the big states. And the big states are divided pretty equally between red and blue. So if we're talking about that, that's the way that works. Most of the myths that I've read, have been pretty much discounted, because this feeds into and this honors the state's right to choose how their electors. And like I said, this can be a real scary thing, because there is no right. You have no constitutional right as a citizen to select the president. That's the scary thing.
The chart you had of states that had adopted it or had hearings, for the ones that have had hearings or near to voting on it, are there enough of them to get to 270? If they go through with it?
Let me look at my notes, because I did have that information in my notes, if I can find it. I know that we're very close in Nevada, and I'm trying to think. We're close in Nevada and Maine, I think, are the two next ones, and Michigan. Those are the three states looking at. So we're looking at 4 in Maine, 15 in Michigan. Nevada is 6. So we just got Minnesota, that was 10 there. One of the things that's interesting is, because of the census count, there was an adjustment to the electors. So some of this has changed. We had one more elector than we have now, because of the change in people moving south. So that was interesting.
My sense is that national popular vote is talked about right after elections, particularly elections
I've been
like,
talking about it in between. Yeah, go ahead.
but it seems to me that it gets all the attention post-election.
Sure it
And
does.
then the momentum fails. So what can be done to keep the momentum up?
We can do all those things I talked about. I go to legislative delegation meetings all the time. We have people in Tallahassee all the time. I email my representative. And if you go to our website, that makes it real easy. I talk to people all the time. Whenever, they'll say, what are you doing, Jane? I'm working on national popular vote. Have I told you about it? You know, so I talk about, all my friends are probably tired of hearing about it. A lot of them, I don't know how many of you are snowbirds that go back to a home state, but you know, you could talk about it at your home state. Schedule a speaker. If you belong to a knitting club or your church group or whatever, schedule a speaker to come in and talk about national popular vote. Because I think more and more people, as they hear about national popular vote and they hear about what happens after an election, they'll consider it. I think one of the scariest things for me is when I people interfering on computers with our elections and our election systems from foreign countries. That's frightening to me, you know, that they might have, that hackers could have access to battleground states. Talk to your friends about it. You know, I will come and speak to any group, or I will schedule someone in my group to come and speak. I just am trying to spread the word, because I think if you become educated about this, you become in favor of it, is my feeling.
We just
You
have time
more?
for one more question, and I just want to say before, because there's someone on chat that has a question. Okay, and after we answer that question, feel free to talk to Jan afterwards or
Absolutely, I'll be here.
write it down, your phone number, and she'll answer something later.
So Ellen's question is, if a state can pass this national popular vote interstate compact, how difficult would it be to reverse course?
It is not difficult to reverse, because in part of the agreement, they have a way. They can't reverse it during an election 6 months before, but they can reverse it anytime after, and they can decide they don't want to be part of it. Each state legislature has that right. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for your attention and really good questions. I appreciate it.
Jan, thank you so much. You really gave us a lot of good information and a lot of potential actions for each of us to take. I'd like to also thank everyone who came today for participating, and I urge you to be informed and to make your voices heard. Engage in the decisions that impact your lives. And if you're not currently a member of the league, please join with us as a member or join with us as a partner working with us on the issues that we're approaching. Jerry, you had some? Jerry's asking for people to assist with voting, and we have several ways you can do that. To assist with voting for the league, you need to be certified, which means taking an online training and quiz. And we can, at the moment, we can only assist with online registration or hand out paper registration forms. We cannot collect them because of the state law, but we can encourage people to vote, to register online, and we can facilitate their completion of their membership or their voter registration forms, excuse me. We do have a group of league members who are certified to register voters, and we have enough that at each of our events, we can assist with voter registration. If you are not certified for voter registration, you can still assist with our events. You just can't assist with the voter registration part, but it's pretty easy. I don't want to say easy, but it is easy. You just have to learn what the law is and what you can do. Lana.
Can we not actually, when we're working to register voters, if someone comes up to us and says, I want to register, and we tell them that they can register online because we can't deal with the piece of paper ballot, can't we work with them right there on our phones and help them to register?
Okay, the question is, can we assist online? Yes, you can assist people to register online, helping them to work through the form. You cannot do it for them. They have to actually do the registration. Did I say that right, Jerry? Okay. You could, or you could give them a stamped envelope and give them the form, and they could fill it out and show them where the mailbox is. but you cannot collect a registration form. Well, you could, but if you don't handle it correctly, the fine is something like $10,000 per form. So the league policy is you will not collect that form. We can't afford that liability. Did anyone else have any other comments? Okay, okay.
You just made the ones. Oh, yeah, I thought, okay, I thought you were going to say more about it. You did mention it, but you weren't going to elaborate on that any. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will be having a league board meeting immediately